So virtually anything can be sufficient consideration. In law school, the old rule was a peppercorn is sufficient consideration. So if I sell my car to you for a peppercorn, the court is generally not going to get into whether I made a bad deal or not. As long as there's some consideration, that's sufficient. So you see contracts that'll say for $5 and other consideration. That's just to indicate that there was some consideration flowing so as to create a legal contract. Okay. So performance can be the consideration in a unilateral contract. We talked about legally sufficient value. Forbearance can be a legally sufficient consideration. So there are cases going back years ago that we studied in law school, for example, where grandfather would say to granddaughter, I really think it's important for you to get a college education. Therefore, if you agree not to get married until you graduate from college, when you graduate from college, I'll give you a brand new car worth at least $20,000. So what is the student, the granddaughter doing? What is hers? It's forbearance. She's forbearing from getting married, something she has a legal right to do. She's giving something up. Sometimes we put that in terms of the word detriment. If it's a detriment to you, then it may be or probably is legally sufficient consideration. Okay, it has to be what's bargained for in the exchange. It has to be what's bargained for, what has been struck between the contracting parties. What's been promised for. Things that lack consideration include a pre-existing duty, where you already had an obligation to do something, then agreeing to do it does not provide sufficient consideration. Exceptions include rescission and a new contract. I'm not going to get into the details of this. This is a little bit too far gone for a business law course. So we said past consideration. Illusory promises are ones that are not clear promises. They're uncertain. That's not sufficient consideration. Settlement of claims, however, can be valid consideration. We have what's called an accord and satisfaction. So if the parties have a dispute over something, and in order to settle that dispute, each one agrees to take something less, then that taking of something less by each party forms that consideration that is adequate to make for a contract. And we go into liquidated debts and unliquidated debts. We've talked about those before. I'm not going to get into the specifics of those. In settlement of claims, some terms you should be aware of include release, which bars further recovery. That can be consideration in an agreement. Covenant not to sue is very similar, and it substitutes contractual obligation for some other type of legal action based on a valid claim. Okay, promissory estoppel, detrimental reliance. This is kind of what I talked about before. The case that's used in a lot of case books is, say you have a very rich man, and this rich man goes to his college that he went to, and he says, I know you need a new business school, so it's going to cost $10 million. I'm going to give you $2 million every year so that you can build this business school. All I ask is that you put my name on the building. So the agreement is made, the $2 million is paid, the building construction starts, and the second year he decides he's not going to do it. Okay? There was a promise made, and the court is going to estop. That is going to prevent him from getting out from under that agreement because it's been relied upon by the institution by beginning the construction process. Okay. The third element is contractual capacity. We're going to talk more about this as we go along, but it's the legal ability to enter into a contractual relationship. Generally, it means that the person is mentally competent, okay, and it also applies to age. And we'll talk about minor contracts later. So a person who's determined not to be mentally competent cannot enter into a contract. Okay, so minors. Actually, what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to stop here with capacity because I'm not sure how much more tape I have on the video, and I'm going to pick up on part 2 of contracts in the next video. Oh, before I leave, what you need to know is the magic word for part 1 of contracts is consideration. Consideration is the magic word.